you'll have an option that says Always Use Diagnosis Consultant. You're going to want to make sure that that's checked. After you check it and click OK, you're going to want to close down ManagementPlus and then reopen so that that takes effect. That is a staff user, so that's going to be unique to each person who logs into ManagementPlus for each individual user. All right, so once you have that checked and you've restarted ManagementPlus, you're going to open a posting screen somehow. So whether it's through patient financials or through EHR, you're going to get to a posting screen. So I'm going to do it from EHR. I know very few people actually build this way and post charges from straight inside the EHR, but if you do, you can use it from inside the EHR. If you don't, then you can do it from wherever you're posting your charges from. So if I come up here to visit, to Window and click Charge Entry, I can also do that if you have a charge grid or a charge slip page with a grid. If you right-click and click Post, then it will pull up this screen. So this is unique to this patient, and everything fills out however you fill it out to be able to post a charge. But what happens here is when you put in a diagnosis code, it's going to pop up this diagnosis consultant that we just enabled. Now, the very first time you use it, you're going to want a very generic ICD-9 code. When I say generic, I mean that you don't want a decimal. So, for example, just type in 366 and push your tab key. It takes a few seconds for this to generate and then to pop up. So just kind of wait for it. And once it pops up, the first time you run it, it will not convert. You're going to have to check this box, suggest ICD-9 codes, and then you'll see them change. All right. From then on, suggest ICD-10 codes, From then on, you can be more specific. For example, I could do 366.16 and then push my tab key. I'll have to wait a few seconds for us to go out and find the codes that apply, but then it will show the conversion for that, or the consultant. Now, where these came from was CMS put out what they called a gem table, and we programmed that into our program. It's not an extensive list of ICD-10 codes. For example, this last number that says 3, that's just for bilateral nuclear cataract. If you had a right eye, it would be a 1 instead of a 3. If you had a left eye, it would be a 2 instead of a 3, and so forth. So this can help. Again, you'd have to kind of know what you were doing to be able to use this if you only have right eye or left eye. So that is available right now in your system. All you have to do is enable it, and you can start using that. And again, you have to be on the posting screen here in order to for that to work. All right. So I'm going to close that. So that's the first thing that we have available to help you with ICD-10. The next two items are specifically within the EHR. If you don't have EHR, you would not be able to use these. But the first one I'm going to show you has to do with your exam findings and the program recommending codes. So almost everybody who uses our system has some sort of potential diagnosis suggestion tool. So I know everybody's forms look different. Some of you have blue-colored backgrounds. Some of you have kind of a pinkish color. Some of you have white, and it's gonna look different depending on your practice. But most of you have some sort of potential diagnosis. On this particular form, it stays hidden until I pull it up, and then it will suggest some codes based on what I put in my exam. So for example, if I put in a cataract, it's going to suggest a cataract code, and I can highlight it and send it to my primary diagnosis just like that. So almost everybody has something similar to that. If you don't, we can put this in anyway. We've tried to build these tools so that no matter how old your forms are, or how new they are, or how much customization you've done to them, we should be able to still implement these tools if you want them. So with this particular tool, If you look at my drop-downs right now, I have a good list of drop-downs. Let's just particularly look at the external here. You can kind of see some of the items that are in here. But what happens is on October 1st, the system's set to automatically change to be compatible with documenting for ICD-10. ICD-10 is a lot more particular about which lead it is, what type of condition it is, how long has it been happening, that sort of thing. So when on October 1st, my drop-downs would immediately change to be updated to a more extensive list that you can see here. So let's say that I choose dermatochalasis and a cataract, which I think is the same, and then I push this potential. So I get dermatochalasis in right upper lid and cataract in the right eye. Now, if you look at this code right here, where it has a 1 on the end, that's signifying just right eye. Well, the system can recognize whether you documented they had a cataract in both eyes, even if it's at a different stage. It'll still recognize that the same type of cataract, and it'll recommend the code that needs to be used for a bilateral cataract. All right. Then there are some times when, let's see if I can choose the right one here. For example, there are 4 different types of ectropions that it wants you to choose from. So it'll recommend, and then you'll have to choose which kind it is when you push it over to your diagnosis. So this is built so that we can easily plug in code that will automatically change your drop-downs for you on October 1st. Now, even if you don't have a drop-down list like this, if you have any type of checklist or any type of drop-down box, we can still plug this in for you. I know some people just have rectangulars or square boxes that just have all their items visible at the same time. We can still implement it into those types. So it's going to be very rare that we can't put this in for you into your forms and kind of just slide it into what you already are using. Now, with that said, your drop-downs will change. So whatever you had in there before will immediately change to these items on October 1st. So if you've done some extensive customizations to your drop-down list, they will change on October 1st. If you worked with IRIS, because when you work with the IRIS registry for QRS, they usually have you add certain drop-down items to certain areas like the macula that they can recognize for their system to generate numbers. If you end up getting this tool and you have linked to IRIS, you need to let us know before we implement it so that we can make sure we keep those options. Now, anything that you add or that is different than the ones that we have pre-configured, they will not be linked to a code. So we would have to link those after the fact, and we will charge extra customization for that. So let me kind of just give you some background on how we did all this. The main thing we used was a book that AAO published called ICD-10-CM for ophthalmology. They did some extensive, I guess you could say, conversion where they took some ICD-9 codes and they published this book that shows which ICD-10 codes match. Sometimes you'll get a 1-for-1 where there's one ICD-9 code and an ICD-10 code that goes right with it, even though you always have 3 ICD-10 codes if you're specifying an I. But some of them, one code, an ICD-9 for ICD-10 is now 12 codes. So we used their published book to be able to modify and program each different part of the eye and your slit lamp exam to be able to have the documentation and the wording compatible with how an ICD-10 code will generate. So that is the second option that we have, and these ones that I'm talking about right now, the two that are in EHR, there will be a cost to. I'll get to that in just a minute. But these two, the one I just showed you, the next one I'll show you, are only for EHR. And again, if you don't have EHR, they would not work. So the next one I want to do is a conversion tool that we created. Again, we used the ICD-10 book put out by AAO to make these conversions and to get our information. But they had about 210 or so codes that they specified what the ICD-10 code would match to the ICD-9 code. So all those 210 codes that they had in their book, we programmed in, plus maybe 10 or 15 more that we saw that most of our practices bill that weren't in AAO's list. So if you get, it is possible to type in an ICD-9 code that we have not programmed in to convert or to register an ICD-10 code. And in that case, it just wouldn't do anything when you ran either of these tools. But the next thing I want to show you is a converter tool. So for those who want to just remember their ICD-9 codes and put it in and have it converted to an ICD-10, this would be the option. So I'm just going to throw a few codes in here so that I can show you what it does. And kind of some of the different options that will pull up depending on what type of code it is. Okay, so the first one is a simple cataract. Pretty much every code for ICD-10, they need more information than we usually give. So if you click this little 10 button next to the diagnosis that you want to convert, it will prompt you for all the information it needs to be able to convert that code. So in this case, we need an eye, and then it was able to convert it with just the eye. In this case, we need to know which lid. The next case, it's going to ask us for a stage. This one, for foreign body in the cornea, it's going to ask us first for an eye, and then it's going to ask which type of visit is the first time, second time, is this due to a past disease or whatever. And once it gets all the information again that it needs, then it can convert the code, and it will keep prompting you for everything it needs until it gets all the information that it needs to do that. This last one is a good example of a common code that everybody uses in ICD-9. One code pretty much said it all. Now for ICD-10, that one code, there are a possibility of 12 different codes. So this will prompt you for a little bit more information that you can select, and then it will convert the code for you. So again, we did not do every single ICD-9 code, but I would guess that 98% of the eye-specific diagnosis codes that you all use will be covered here. And again, if it's not, if I click the 10 button, nothing will happen to the code. It will just sit there. So in this case, you have most of the eye code or the eye-specific diagnoses that you're going to ever use in there. Now, let me talk about pricing for this. For both of those tools that I just showed you, the cost is $699. Let me tell you what that includes. It's going to include the conversion tool and the potential diagnosis, so the drop-down's changing and being able to do that. It includes all the time that it will take us to link this into your system. So if you do purchase this, you will be assigned to an EHR specialist, probably the same EHR specialist that worked with you for meaningful use stuff. That could change, but most likely it'll be the same one. So it'll include all the time it takes us to link these in for you. It also includes an upgrade to the latest ICD-10 codes. So a new set of ICD-10 codes just came out about 3 weeks ago. 4 weeks ago maybe, and it'll include that new set with this, and that'll be available when you purchase. So if you would like to purchase this, again, it's $699. You can contact our support. So it'd be via email is probably the best way. You can call, but if you do it via email, you'll send it to support@managementplus.com. They'll invoice you once they get that request from you, and then it'll be assigned to your HR specialist to start getting it in and links for you. If there's extra thing, and I kind of mentioned this before, if there's extra things that you want, if there's extra drop-down items that you want to change and link, we will charge per hour for customization. It's $200 per hour, and I can kind of give you an idea of how long it took to do this entire project. It was about 60 hours of pure customization, so that would be about $12,000 if we were to just start from scratch. So you have a few options available. If you've done so much extensive customization on your own, maybe you have Form Designer tool and you guys use it, for that same price, we can just give you a form with all the information that you need and all the coding and everything that you can just plug in yourself and tweak the code if you want to. It's still going to be the same price, but we'll generate it in a way that you can use it and implement it into your system if you want to do it yourself. We will, if you decide, well, I only want the conversion tool and not the potential diagnosis tool, or vice versa, it's still going to be the same price. You would just tell us beforehand that you want one and not the other. All right, so those are the options that we have available. We put a lot of time and research into this, and we hope that it will ease your mind a little bit and make you believe that it's going to be a little bit easier than you thought to do this once October 1st rolls around the bend. So again, if this is something you want, you can contact our support@managementplus.com or via our 1-800 number and get that going. Let me just see if there are any questions. It doesn't look like anybody's asked any questions, so thanks everybody for coming. And if you do end up having questions, again, you can just email our support team and they'll get them to one of the HR specialists who will be able to answer your questions about this. Thanks everyone for attending, and have a good day.